In today's video, we'll go over everything you need to know about the Valorant economy. What's going on, guys? It's your host, Sergeant Frost, and welcome back to another episode of Noob to Pro. Today, we're breaking down Valorant's economy system, how to plan your buys, as well as some more advanced tips to play into Valorant's resource management aspects better. We'll start with the basics and then work on to more and more advanced topics as the video progresses, so make sure to watch till the end. Now, let's get into it. So first things first, how do you make money? Well, kills grant you 200 credits apiece. Getting the spike down grants everyone on the team 300, and the biggest reward of them all is winning a round, which grants 3,000 across the board. Though of course you can't win every round, so you also get money for losing. First round you lose, you get 1,900. Lose 2 in a row, you get 2,400. Or if you go on a bit of a streak and lose 3 or more in a row, you get 2,900, which is just 100 credits less than your opponents are getting for their win. Those are the basic rules, but there are exceptions. If you stay alive but lose the round without planting the spike as an attacker, you only get 1,000 loss reward. And similarly, if you stay alive on defense but let the spike detonate, then just a single 1,000 in rewards for you. So make sure to take that into account when you only have something like a pistol. If you don't have a proper gun, it's better to die to the spike than to stay alive. Now for some Valorant economy terms that you'll hear a lot and need to understand. Firstly, a full buy. This is when your team has a good amount of credits and everyone can afford to buy either a Phantom or a Vandal, some abilities, and armor. You basically want to have these rounds as often as possible, but your team can't always afford a full buy. So if they can't, then there's a save or an eco round. These are rounds in which your team cannot invest because, well, you lack the credits. During a save round, you pay close attention to this little indicator in the buy menu. It says minimum next round, and it refers to the minimum amount of credits you'll get in the next round, assuming you get no kills and lose, that is. Keep this number above 3,900 or preferably something higher like 4,300 or 4,500, and you'll be able to full buy in the round afterwards. Sometimes this type of round is also referred to as a half buy, especially when it's a bit later into the game. But don't worry, the idea and objective is exactly the same. And then lastly, there's a force buy, which is when you don't actually have the money to full buy, but you try to force a buy regardless. This is usually to attempt a round win at an economic disadvantage. It isn't done super often though, but we'll go into when you should later in the video. Now before we move on to the first round of the game, the pistol round, I gotta quickly let you know the fastest way to improve is through our website ProGuides.com. There we offer coaching and guides made by the pros that you won't be able to get anywhere else. Try it out today for just $8 a month. Anyways, let's continue. Pistol rounds are the first rounds of every half. They get their name from the fact that everyone is limited to 800 credits and thus can only field a pistol. Now, there's a few options you can go for in the pistol, a handful of different weapons, and then also armor or abilities depending on what agent you're playing. Most people most of the time go for a 500 credit ghost and use the remaining 300 credits for an ability. The ghost is good because it deals 105 headshot damage at close range, and that means you can one-shot anyone without armor in the head, which is of course very powerful. But there are also some agents where it makes a lot more sense to buy 400 credit armor, which means you're going to be stuck on the classic. Think of an agent like Sage, for example. Sage's wall is her strongest ability, and on pistol rounds it's even harder to break than normal. So if you want to purchase her wall for 400 credits, you won't have the 500 left for a ghost. So you may as well get the armor. Same thing goes for an agent like Sova on the attacking side. You really need to use your drone on pistol, as it is a super powerful ability, but it does cost 400 credits. So again, probably no ghost for you. But not having a ghost is not as bad as it may sound, since buying an ability plus armor means that you have 125 health, which is more than the 105 damage that a ghost headshot does. It's also almost a bit of a counter. Now, because some people really want to supercharge their headshots, and they want to guarantee a one-shot kill at any range, they could also opt for a sheriff. That gun does cost 800 credits though, so essentially you're sacrificing abilities so you can get a stronger gun. You should decide for yourself if it's worth it, but never sacrifice abilities that are crucial, especially on smoker agents like Omen or initiators like Sova. It's very cool that you have a sheriff, but how are you going to get on site without any abilities? Alright, let's say you win that round, what's next? If you win the pistol round, you receive more income than the enemies. Like we talked about, a loss is worth 1,900 credits and a win is worth 3,000, so you have an advantage. To capitalize off this newly acquired wealth, you're going to have to reinvest. In the second round after the pistol, you should always try to get as good as a buy as you can. Your opponents have less money, so you can easily win the second round, as long as you play your cards right, that is. This likely means that you'll be on something like a Spectre full armor with abilities, maybe even a Bulldog or a Guardian. Or if you get a lot of kills in the first round, you might be able to even afford a Vandal. The enemies on the other hand will only be able to afford a Spectre light armor, some pistols, or maybe something like a Stinger. But most of the time they won't buy anything more than sheriffs just so that they can get a proper buy in round 3. Now I know in the lower elos of Valorant there are a lot of people that don't really understand how this works. It's not at all uncommon that people give away this economic advantage in the second round, and they only buy a ghost without armor instead of investing heavily like they should. So if your entire team saves, then you might be better off copying their strategy, even if it is suboptimal. You can make the right decision yourself, but it doesn't really achieve much if your 4 teammates don't want to follow. That's just the reality of rank sometimes, and something we've all had to deal with. Now, we'll go over what you should do when you lose a pistol in the second, but to make everything less confusing, we'll first mention what the ideal third round play is if you manage to win the first 2. Alright, so here's where the minimum next round thing becomes really important. The third round is what we call a bonus, and that's because you're not really trying to win it as much as the other rounds. It's just a nice extra if you do. So let me explain. On the bonus round, you'll probably still have a few specters and in general not so great guns that you use to win the second round. You don't just want to waste them, however, as at this stage of the game your economy is not very good yet. Every credit counts, remember that. So what you do instead is keep those guns and invest as much as you can while keeping the minimum next round around roughly 4,300. So that way you can get a Vandal or a Phantom plus armor and abilities in round 4. Maybe 3 of your teammates survive with Spectres, so they just buy full armor, and the 2 teammates that died play with whatever they can afford, staying above the 4,000 minimum next round threshold. On these type of rounds, always pay close attention to what everyone on your team has. If someone has both a Spectre and a Sheriff, it's a good idea to drop one of the 2 teammates that died, so that way they won't have to waste their credits on something that they could have gotten for free. This way you can get the best buy with minimal resources. Now this is going to get a bit more advanced, but there are some exceptions to the bonus round. If you win the first 2, you almost always want to play for the bonus on the third round, but there's a reason I say almost. When the second round is very close and your team wins but only with 1 player, it might be a better idea to force a buy in round 3, as with 1 Spectre and 4 Sheriffs no armor, you're not going to field a very good bonus round, and your chances of winning are going to be super slim. So if you know you should probably bonus, but the bonus buy is just too weak, it might be better to force up regardless. And the second exception is if your opponents do not eco in round 2, but instead force up themselves. If you press tab and you see your opponents, you only have 3,000 credits each in round 3. Well, then they can't properly buy themselves. So it's better to buy a Vandal or Phantom and force up. Now, of course, the pistol round is not always a guaranteed dub, so what do you do after a loss? Well, as we hinted at earlier, a team that lost the pistol is at a disadvantage. There's less credits to go around. So most of the time, it's a good idea to concede round 2, to not spend too many credits and try to go for round 3. Make sure you keep your minimum credits for the next round at around 4,000, and see if you can maybe afford a Shorty, Frenzy, or another pistol. However, there is also an option of trying to surprise your opponents and forcing round 2. This type of play is particularly strong if you're on attack and manage to get the bomb plant, as everyone now has just enough to buy a Stinger armor with some abilities or a Spectre light armor without them. But I should reiterate, even if you get the bomb plant, the enemies will still have the economic advantage, so only force if you have a smart plan to put these Stingers to good use. Think of a nice sight rush, or another surprising play where the limited range of these guns isn't a big problem. Winning the second round is a big deal, and it can break both the enemy's economy and the mental at once. But it is a very risky strategy, and not one you should do without a plan going into it. Alright, that's the early game. After that, it gets a lot simpler. In the mid to late stages of the game, there's basically only 2 real strategies, half buying and full buying. You full buy whenever you can. If you and all your teammates can afford a Vandal or a Phantom, full armor and abilities, it's time to full buy. Get the big guns out, buy up all your abilities and try to win the round. And if you or some of your teammates can't afford to buy everything you'd need, well then you half buy. That is to say that you look at your minimum credits next round statistic, buy some stuff you can afford while keeping your next round monies above 4,300. Here, being able to properly use eco guns like the Sheriff, Frenzy, and Shorty, and sometimes even a Stinger or Spectre is really important. If you're proficient with a couple of these guns, you can make these half-buy rounds a lot more dangerous. That way, you have a good chance of winning the eco while also giving yourself the opportunity of having a level playing field the round following. Speaking of which, we should ask, what's your favorite eco weapon? For me, it's the Sheriff and the Stinger. The Stinger just feels really good right now, but at the same time, the Sheriff headshots are just so satisfying. But make sure to comment yours below. Alright, that's the basics, but if you want to understand the economy even better, there are some more advanced things that we can get into. First of all, half armor light shields only cost 400 credits, while heavy shields cost 1,000. But arguably, that extra 600 is not always worth it. No shields means you're on 100 HP, which is not optimal to say the least. With light shields, it'll give you 125 health, and with heavy shields, you'll get 150. You pay 400 for an extra 25 health, and another 600 for the last 25. However, it is important to realize that the most popular full buy weapon, the Vandal, deals 160 damage on headshots, and 40 damage per body shot. So regardless of whether you have full, light, or no armor, you'll get one tap by a headshot regardless. And while having no armor means you'll die in 3 shots in the body, having 125 health or 150 health makes no difference when it comes to how many Vandal body shots you can take. It's gonna be 4 either way. So that raises the question, is there any point in buying heavy shields at all? The answer being yes, of course. The Phantom deals 140 damage per headshot at mid-range, and similarly will take 5 shots to kill heavy armor, as opposed to the 4 shots on light armor at least at mid-range. And then you also have the factors of utility which can damage and chip away off your armor, or things like wall bangs which are not at all uncommon in a game like Valorant. Basically, there's a lot of ways that 150 health can save you, where you would have died with just 125. But since this difference isn't as massive as the difference between 100 and 125 health, you can sometimes consider sacrificing heavy shields in the future round, so that way you can buy something like a sheriff to try to win a save round. And similarly, it's good practice to prioritize having all of your utility over having heavy shields. If you're playing Attack Sova and you purchase heavy shields with a Vandal without a drone, you're simply just trolling. Having that drone is much more valuable than having the 600 credit investment into the extra 25 HP. And lastly, on the topic of light shields, sometimes when you're half buying and you purchase a Sheriff heavy shield, keep your minimum next round at 4,500. It still might be better to eco even more than buying a light shield with Sheriff. This extra bit of saving will put your minimum next round at 5,100, which won't make a difference immediately but can really help you out a couple rounds later, when your cash might end up getting tight again. Alright, that's gonna wrap up the guide. Hopefully you have a better idea of how the Valorant economy works, and how to best manage it. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this has been your host Sergeant Frost, and I'll see you all again in the next one.